Hi Year 12, it's Mr. Azzopardi with a video about essay writing. So if you could seen on Teams that I have put up a series of essays on religious experiences, and I'm going to do a few videos talking through how you might answer those essays. I'm not going to tell you everything you need to write. That would be pointless. I'm not going to do the introductions, for example. You can do all that stuff yourself, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the content for the different essays. I'm not necessarily going to do a video about every essay. I'll do the ones where I think you're really going to need some guidance on, and I might do for the essays that I don't cover in a video each. I might just do a quick video, kind of saying something about all of those essays, but we'll see. So just to say something generally about essays on religious experiences, they generally fall into one of a number of categories, maybe four categories. Firstly, you can get questions that are just generally about religious experiences. So something like, religious experiences are good evidence for the existence of God. That's a nice question because you can just pick from whatever you want to talk about, really. You can use any of the theories for why we should believe in religious experiences and any of the theories for why we shouldn't. Secondly, you might get asked a question like this one on a particular kind of religious experience. So you could get asked about corporate religious experiences. Are they good evidence for the existence of God? You could ask about conversion experiences. Are they good evidence? And you could get asked about mystical experiences. And we haven't, although we've actually done all the material on them, we haven't talked directly about them in a kind of direct way. And so I will definitely do a video on that later. Then you could get asked to compare two different kind of religious experiences. So, what's better evidence for the existence of God? Is conversion better than corporate? Is mystical better than conversion? And so on and so on. So you could get any of the different experiences against each other as a kind of comparative essay. Quite a good essay to come up because it means you wouldn't run out of material there because you've got to write about two different kinds of experience. Lastly, you might get a question about William James specifically, and I will do a video about how to write an essay on William James because it's a bit complicated. Although I don't think his theory is difficult to explain, I think that it's sometimes quite difficult to know what you need to write in an essay about him. Okay, so this essay is about corporate experiences. To what extent do corporate experiences provide strong evidence for the existence of God? Quite a nicely worded essay. Do corporate experiences prove there's a God or not? So, like I said, I'm not doing an introduction. I'm going to talk you through three kind of perils. You might only want to write two. It depends on the depth you go into, but you'll understand that as we go through. Okay, I would start off by looking at non-dramatic corporate experiences, my first peril. I should say that overall, when people study corporate experiences, dramatic experiences are more important, and in the sense they get more, that they're often usually seen as better proof for God, and they're also just the ones that are covered in more detail. So when people think about corporate experiences, they're usually thinking about things like the Toronto blessing. But non-dramatic corporate experiences are certainly more widespread than dramatic ones, so they are important. So what we're going to say about these, so we're going to start off with here why to believe in non-dramatic corporate experiences, why to say they are good experience for the evidence for the existence of God, and then we'll look at why they're not. So the main reason is that, well, these experiences are very widespread. They happen a lot. And you want to give some examples. Now, it's impossible to give individual examples because that's not the sort of thing we're talking about. We're talking about people going to religious buildings, religious places of worship, religious events alongside other people, and feeling a sense of God's presence. So use the sort of things we looked at in the video I did on corporate experiences. So I focused on music there, Hillsong, contemporary Christian worship, Gregorian chant, Teze, worship. All these different kinds of music which invoke in people a sense of God's presence. You could also talk about the beauty of religious buildings, the smell of incense that is part of some religious worship, just giving people this experience of God being there. Now you could link this to Swinburne. I would probably link it to Swinburne. It's always good to put a scholar in there. Swinburne says that people's experiences, unless we've got a reason to doubt them, specific reason to know they're lying, people's experiences are likely to be as they report them to be. So in other words, people go to church, they feel got the presence of God, therefore there probably is a God who they're experiencing. However, our criticism, it's easy to give criticisms of Swinburne. You could put that in to begin with. We shouldn't necessarily believe people. And in this case, it's really easy to provide alternative explanations for where these experiences are coming from, because they could just be an experience of the music, the beauty of the surroundings, the smell of the incense, are invoking a pleasant experience in this person, and they are interpreting it as an experience of God. Here's where I definitely use Hick's idea of experiencing as. Go back to the video on corporate experiences if you're not sure what I mean there. The reason it says on the slides, be careful about using Hick, is because Hick is a Christian, and he's a liberal kind of Christian, a kind of alternative kind of Christian, but he's still a Christian. And therefore he does not think of himself as using that theory to criticize the idea of religious experiences as evidence of God. But we are using his theory here to criticize. So you've got to make it clear that we could employ the idea, John Hick's idea of experiencing as. And you want to say something like, although Hick is himself a Christian and a believer in religious experiences, his ideas here can help us to see why non-dramatic corporate experiences are not great evidence for the existence of God. Hope that makes sense. Okay, second, peril 2 is on dramatic corporate experiences. Actually, 2 and 3 are both on dramatic corporate experiences. This, to me, is the heart of this essay, is this peril. So if you're thinking about where should I put the most emphasis, what should be the longest peril, it should definitely be this one, because this is really the heart of the argument. So the point is that they can be seen as harder to explain, these dramatic corporate experiences, than any other kind of experience. Firstly, they involve dramatic experiences, so they cannot be simply experiencing as. If someone feels a sense of God, but it's just a kind of feeling that God is there without anything dramatic happening, then it's easy to explain away in terms of John Hick's experiencing as. They're just having an experience the same as anyone else, but they're experiencing it as, they're interpreting it as an experience of God. On the other hand, dramatic corporate experiences like the Toronto blessing, and it's important here to use examples in your discussion here, those dramatic experiences, things are happening like speaking in tongues, like people being knocked over by the Holy Spirit, like uncontrollable laughing or crying, even I think in the Toronto blessing, barking like a dog, all that kind of stuff. So stuff is happening that you can't just dismiss as, oh, they're having the same experience as anyone else, they just feel like it comes from God. No, stuff is happening that needs to be explained. Secondly, it happens to so many people at the same time that it'd be crazy to think that this was either hallucinatory psychosis or temporal lobe epilepsy. Those explanations are just not relevant here, because it's impossible to think that thousands of people could have hallucinatory psychosis at the same time, or could all be experiencing fits of temporal lobe epilepsy at the same time. That would be just so statistically unlikely. So these are harder to explain, and that seems to suggest they would give good evidence for the existence of God. However, there's a strong response, and that is the Ash experiment and groupthink. And I want to see what you'd want to talk about the Ash experiment in there. If the best answers will be the ones that brought out that there are actually two explanations in the Ash experiment. It could be that people join in with the Toronto blessing, the things that happen at the Toronto blessing, because they don't want to stand out from the crowd, so they feel influenced by other people to do it. But it also could be that they actually are so influenced by people around them that they kind of feel that they are experiencing the Holy Spirit. Like they're thinking, everyone around me is experiencing this. I think I am. I think I'm being knocked down by the Holy Spirit. So it could be that. So there are two explanations in there. That gives it a bit more depth, your answer. If you're thinking about evaluating there, when you evaluate, I always think that you've got to put down this idea that, well, it does explain why people join in with the Toronto blessing, why people join in with these dramatic experiences, but does it explain where they start in the first place? That'll be your own place to say what you think there. How do you explain that fact that, well, for it to be a groupthink, you have to have some people already doing this thing, already having that experience for other people to want to join in. So that's an important point. Okay. So this is more on dramatic religious experiences, and I should say, if you do that second peril there in a massive amount of depth, you might not have room for this last peril, and that wouldn't necessarily be a massive problem. In the mark scheme for essays, in what makes a good essay, it talks about an essay having a really good amount of breadth or depth. So breadth would mean looks at lots of different points. Depth means explores fewer points, but in really a great amount of detail. So you kind of got an option there from the exam board to either do fewer perils, but really explore them in real detail, or to do more perils. So it's up to you. If your second one was kind of not that long and you had room, then add this third one in. Now this one is a point from a Christian point of view, and it's actually a reason to not believe in dramatic experiences. So the other two perils I did, I began with reasons to believe that they're good evidence, and then I responded. Here I'm saying, why might some people think they are not good evidence for the existence of God? Now it might seem strange, because how can it be a Christian point of view if it's going to say they're not good evidence? But some Christians, as we saw in the video on corporate experiences, believe in God, obviously, but do not think corporate experiences are great evidence for the existence of God. So they would say that there is good reasons to believe in God, but this isn't part of those good reasons. And some Christians are deeply skeptical and critical of these kind of experiences. So you've got to look at the criticisms of things like the Toronto Blessing. I think, you could look at Medjugorje too, but I think Toronto Blessing is great to use because of that fact that the Church of the Toronto Blessing was kicked out of the Vineyard Fellowship. I think it makes a really nice, really helps to illustrate very clearly the problem some people have with corporate experiences. So what's the problem they have? Well, Christians traditionally say, judge an experience on its fruits, on its results. What kind of person does it make you? And that's based on a quote from the Bible. The fruit of the Spirit is da 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 blah 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 blah. It's also based on. You could also link it to William James. William James, who says that authentic religious experience is marked by a change in the soul of the person, making them a kinder, more patient, more selfless person. Whereas in some of these dramatic cases of religious experience, like the Toronto Blessing, it seems to have resulted in a kind of a more focus, less on being a good person and more on having these dramatic experiences. People accuse the people from that church of kind of arrogance, of always going after more and more dramatic experiences. And so it's not this lessened sense of self, it's a more built up sense of self and a more strong emphasis on more and more dramatic experiences. Now, how do you respond to that? Well, people who believe in these experiences can easily respond by saying, well, look at the Bible. Christians are supposed to believe in the Bible. And in the Bible, these dramatic religious experiences do happen most dramatically in Pentecost. Pentecost, the story of when the disciples were gathered after Jesus had died, he'd come back from the dead, he'd ascended into heaven, so he was gone again. And the disciples were kind of lost, didn't know what to do. And the Holy Spirit was sent to them according to the story, and it caused them to speak in tongues in a very dramatic way. So from the point of view of someone who believes that these are good evidence for the existence of God, if someone who's talking from a Toronto Blessing point of view, they would say, well, look, this is actually the exact kind of thing that Christians should believe God can do. God did this in the Bible, so he should be doing it in the Toronto Blessing. So that's an interesting kind of insider Christian peril back and forth. And you could go, your evaluation could go in different directions there. You could say, well, from a Christian perspective, from a Christian perspective, no, the Toronto Blessing is not, even though the Pentecost was important to Christians, the Toronto Blessing is not good evidence for the existence of God, because the way that they behaved after the experiences is evidence that these experiences didn't really come from God. You could argue, yes, that experience of Pentecost shows that Toronto Blessing is really a authentic experience of God, because that's what experiences of God are like. That's the sort of thing, the sort of dramatic things that happen when people are experiencing God. You could go down the route of saying that you don't think the Christian argument is relevant. You could just say, well, it doesn't really matter what Christians say. That's not for me a strong reason to believe or disbelieve in these experiences. It's much more a question of looking at them on terms of, did this event happen, and whether it changed the people might to you seem like an irrelevant argument. So it's up to you how you evaluate. So that's the essay. I hope it makes sense. If you've got any questions with it, do send emails and ask me of the videos of the essays I've had handed in so far, essay plans and conclusions and stuff since you've been off. Some of the I'm really seeing some good nuance in that in those conclusions. Not just to say yes, yes or no to the question, but to really say yes but or no but, to really look at how complicated the arguments are. And I think this is another one here where, for me, I always think most of the arguments seem to go in favour of not saying they're good, strong evidence for the existence of God, but you've still got that little thing of, if we're explaining away corporate experiences in terms of groupthink, well, how did the experiences start in the first place? Because you need to have a group of people doing those experiences in order to persuade other people to do them through the idea of conformity. So that's quite a complicated issue and something you could explore in your conclusion. Okay, hope that helps. I hope everyone is okay at that. Bye.